really serious, I'm going to turn it around. Anyway, Raphael, use these. These are Psy. They look ridiculously cool. They are a Hollywood staple. If it's a ninja movie, if it's an Egyptian movie, because apparently people who fight mummies use these too. I'm not huge on Egyptian culture, but I don't remember seeing anything in the museums where they use Psy, but they did in the mummy. So these are awesome. They look ridiculously cool because basically it's an 11-inch dagger. And if you aren't into Ninja Turtles, there was also, if you like girls in red leather spinning around, that was Elektra in Daredevil, right?
Yeah.
You remember that scene where she's practicing in her house? Evanescence is screaming in the background, which is the best way to listen to Evanescence. And she's spinning around going, "Fwah!" and cuts the sandbag in half. I have news for you on the Psy. And this isn't because they're the special needs version. Okay? The Psy was not sharp. It's not a knife. This was a farm tool. This is going to sound terrible, but we're from Iowa. We're Iowa farm kids. Do you know what these were used for? In Japan, their main agricultural product is rice. And you know that. Have you ever seen a rice field? Mm-hmm. It's 4 inches of water over 4 inches of mud. And this is why the Iowa farm kid reference wasn't just some random thing I threw in there because I felt like sharing. It's my Facebook status. If you take seed and just throw it on top of unmoving stagnant water, it does not germinate and grow into a plant. What it does is rot. Japanese farmers, the economy was so tight, the nobility took so much of everything. Japanese farmers actually planted rice seeds individually. It wasn't with a broadcast spreader that went everywhere. They took rice seeds and they had to push them down below, not just the water line, but the mud line, had to get to drier ground so that the seeds would grow. So they took rice seeds and pushed them down into solid ground. And can you imagine that for a job? This is what I do for a living. Forget about carpal tunnel sitting at your in your air-conditioned office at a desk typing. I plant rice seeds one at a time. And if you're going, did they really do that? Yeah, you can actually look online. There are pictures now because there's a group in Japan that plants different colored rice seeds. So when it grows, the rice is in different colors. And the aerial pictures are these amazing designs. And they get that because they plant the seeds individually. And that's why these weren't sharp. They didn't have to be because you don't have to cut water or mud. You just push the seed down. They do look really cool, but they're not really balanced the same way that a dagger is, a tanto. So instead of holding them like this to use for self-defense, if you train in this weapon, or if you've even seen them used, they normally hold them like this, or even like this. And people call this, if you buy one of these in the vendor room from one of the weapons dealers, they're going to tell you this is called the sword breaker. These did not break swords. Okay, and furthermore, if somebody attacked, do you have any idea how terrifying it is for me to look over, making sure she's got her mark, she's got the sword out, but she's holding a full piece of steel going. You did see that, right? You tell me you got that on.
I did.
Some lunatic comes flying at you with a 3-foot sharpened razor blade, and you're going to hold your, catch it! Well, there's once, twice, and by the 4th time, I'm back to special needs version. Because putting that there where the sword's come is not, and besides which, if somebody attacks you with a sword, if your best move is to go, ah, and catch it in a tuning fork, you need help.
Go back to your other thing.
Move! Run away! Maybe we'd confuse it if we ran away further. Sorry, that went Monty Python.
Can't help it.
Forgot we had Tim sitting in the front row. The side wasn't balanced very for self-defense, and it wasn't sharp. Now, I'm not saying that if you took an 11-inch metal spike and stuck it in somebody's eye and squished it around and pulled it out, that it wouldn't discourage somebody. But it was kind of limited in its ability for that. And as far as use against the sword, they did modify the weapon. Japanese are huge on tinkering. I mean, I don't want to make this into a cultural thing, but throughout history, they're famous not for inventing things, but for taking them and modifying them and adapting them and making them better. And one of the things they did is they took a farm implement that wasn't a very effective weapon, and they made, if you're going to come in and choke him, we have other weapons you can use. Here.
No, you're fine.
Stay there, we'll be right with you.
My body is ready.
On Sunday morning, yeah, there's very little resistance. I think the board could take us all now. Resistance is futile. Okay, so, really? I'll stall.
Actually, I have a question first.
Do you have a question?
Why do they have the side guards?
You mean for back then?
Yeah.
It was actually the stop, so when you pushed it in, it wasn't, and they actually flare because that helps it stop. If it was at a straight up and down angle, when you pushed it into the dirt, if it was straight up and down, it would just keep going and embed itself. You know,
They
like
also-
a 3-tine stake thing.
They also kept it hooked to your pants when you walked carrying your buckets of seed and everything else.
Yeah.
If you just had a straight piece of metal, it would not stay.
But that was another reason for blunted tines that went out this way a little bit. Because putting that right here and running is not a good. It's like those gangsters with the handgun cocked and loaded in the front of their pants. I'm like, that's probably a good idea because we don't want your kind to reproduce. What? What is in that soda?
My soda.
After a while, this got modified. During the 1600s, when the Tokugawas came into power and they unified Japan, the government wanted the samurai to have something else to do, because having a large, young, highly trained, restless group of warriors is a bad recipe for government stability. So they gave them a distraction. It's called the red light district. Uh-huh.
Yep.
It was actually government of all things. But to patrol the red light district, they created a low-ranking level of samurai. It was a special police officer called a doshin. And to keep drunken nobility from getting out of hand with swords,
What are you saying?
drunken samurai with swords are a bad thing. And watching you stagger around, I understand why. What they did is they gave the doshin a 50-inch oak dowel. It was called a jo. Apparently it was Bo's little brother. And a modified version of the sai. What they did is they knocked one of the tines off, and they made this a little bit shorter. They took it from 11 inches down to about 8 5/8. It was just under 9. Just under 9 inches. I'm going blank on that. The shaku was a unit of measurement in Japan. It was 11.9 inches. No, so it was roughly a foot. I'm trying to remember their designation for that. Anyway, it was a little bit shorter. They made this thicker and they changed the angle so it was more of a 45. And what they did when they were working the red light district, there was some drunk samurai out waving his sword around. It was considered a bad career move to just stand back and shoot them with a bow and arrow, because these are the nobility. So when the drunken samurai is waving the sword around, you use the stick to knock the blade down. You did not go, wah, because the sword's going to go right through that. We've actually done that at a demonstration once. We took somebody's jo and I just hacked pieces off of it. Like, look, that's not how it was used, for obvious reasons. Don't hit me! No, bad move. When they swing the sword, though, you use the stick to knock the blade down. And then you took the modified weapon, which is called a jite, put it on top of the blade and locked it. You couldn't break the sword, but you would lock the blade in place so they couldn't swing it around. And then you would bargain with them, because you had a stick. And all they had was an empty sake bottle. And if we have anybody that takes modern Aikido, if you learn the jo as a weapon, once you get past the little 13-step kata, what you're learning are all these really cool locks and takedowns, and you're going, why am I learning to beat somebody up with a stick when they don't have anything? They were Goshin-jitsu. They were arrest techniques to use on drunken samurai after you took their sword away from them. And so we work on a lot of these. Just
Oh.
bow to me.
Oh.
I'm not sure what they did to samurai the bit. But the side itself was not a really effective.
Her turn.
No. I've played that game. It didn't end well.